then you can add team building and fun and feedback and growth and all these things to it. But I think that that's the basis that unlocks a lot of power. Let's see that as an opportunity to learn something about us individually, about us as a team, and about the system, the organization beyond us. Making sure we don't confuse these two things. And we know that we can trust each other, we can respect each other, we know how to communicate. Okay, so now that that's clear,
Christina Figiel is a people and organizational expert with over 12 years of leadership experience, including at McKinsey Company. She excels in strategic transformations, operational efficiency, and founder coaching within European startup ecosystems. Multilingual and passionate about empowering individuals and teams, Christina brings expertise in executive coaching, change management, and workshop facilitation. Christina, welcome to the Resilience Podcast. It's great to have you here.
thank you so much.
Perhaps you could share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes, I'm a founder coach. So I work with people who go on the crazy roller coaster of building something out of nothing. And especially in the phase when they go from a startup to a scale up. So when they are growing really, really quickly and oftentimes realize the leadership that's needed now is not what got them there. And also coming from the deep belief that the business cannot grow faster than its leaders. I also work as a leadership coach at IE Business School here in Madrid. And in my past life, I worked in consulting with McKinsey and then in a few different tech companies throughout Europe. And I'm also a mom to two amazing kids.
Excellent. And you're based in Madrid.
I'm based in Madrid, Spain, where the hot days are in.
I hear it is that time of year. Quite a contrast to where I'm sitting in the darkness in New Zealand. Perhaps we could start off by defining what is a high performance team? What does it look like from your experience?
I think I would go with emotion. A high performing team is this. It's something that never stands still. It's something that goes from one learning curve to the next quite naturally, which means that it's a team that doesn't take pleasure in staying where it is and, tapping yourself on the back and saying great, but always looks at a way to do something small better, to find something to add a bit more value and goes through that together.
And that's not for everyone. I've really noticed that in my experience. Some teams hit a plateau and they're quite comfortable there. And when someone comes in and disrupts everything because they see some potential for progress, people resist. And that's often when Resilience Institute gets pulled in. But I realize in my own experience, I'm often that disruptive force, which doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's what I've seen also in my past work as a consultant and now as a coach is people who are not used to that, they will tell you, but we've been doing it this way for the last 10, 20 years and it's worked perfectly fine. You're always like, yeah, it's because you've been standing still.
Yeah.
And so teams and leaders who really embrace that growth are the ones who usually have gone through many, many learning curves in the past and have seen that, yes, where we are today is because we already redefined ourselves, how we are, who we are, how we work together, how we're together when it's tough, many, many times. And I think that's what makes all the difference. It's the not standing still.
Yeah, nothing stands still in nature. So why would we expect it to stand still in the business environment? And it shouldn't. A business is a living entity, a collection of people working hopefully towards a common goal. And on that note, I'm very interested to hear, what are some of the fundamental characteristics that you've seen or traits of a high performing team?
Mm-hmm. A few come to mind. I will talk about 3 for now. I think it's trust, it's conflictability, and it's communication. And I think the trust piece is if you within the team cannot trust that the rest of the team and your leader have your back, and tell you the truth and will be honest with you when it's needed, why would you show up 100% your authentic, hardworking, motivated self every day? And I think trust is something that is most difficult to build because it fully relies on all the past experience. Which also means that every time you change something in a team or in a system, that's something you have to redevelop. Trust is not something that, again, is stable, is given, can go away. But without trust, I fundamentally believe you're starting from very limited ability to perform well. The conflict piece for me is something that I've learned more and more in recent years is in most societies, we perceive conflict as something bad. Like, oh, no, I'm not going to say this. I will make this other person upset. I don't want to create an uncomfortable situation and so on.
This episode is brought to you by the Resilience Institute's new Resilience Assessment. It's designed to redefine how we understand and enhance organizational resilience with features like leadership lenses so that you can view your data from multiple perspectives. Imagine being able to understand mental health risk or well-being, resilience, even happiness within your organization and team by team. The tool features simplified scoring and it's based on our robust and reliable resilience diagnostic and development framework. The resilience assessment is designed to equip leaders with the tools needed to support a thriving workplace. It's built on 2 decades of research, 5 rounds of psychometrics, and it will help you to identify risks like burnout before they affect your team, empowering you to build a healthier and more productive work environment. So click the link in the show notes below or visit resilienceeye.com and sign up for a demo. You can try it for yourself or book a demo for your team. The resilience assessment is where well-being meets performance, ensuring that your team not only survives, but thrives. Let's get back to the episode.
Whereas in my experience, conflict actually opens a door because it's already there. There's already an elephant in the room. There's already something broken. There's already something everybody's sensing. And as long as you don't bring it to the front and address it, it just eats all the energy from the team. And then all the energy goes into, looking away from the elephant and hiding from it rather than actually working through it, learning from it, going through the next learning curve, and then being fully dedicated in what you're trying to achieve. So I think conflictability is a big, big element of teams that perform well. Not being afraid of it and also not taking it personal, because conflict just means that there's more than one truth here. Oh, interesting. So what can we learn from the different truths that are present? And I think the communication piece is critical, and I'm happy to talk about that more. But if information isn't available and doesn't flow, things break down. You can trust as much as you want. You can be open to work through conflict as much as you want. If information is not shared as it has to be, again, you don't know what you're working towards, for example. And here in my experience, there's many leaders who are afraid of over communicating. I've never heard of somebody said, my organization, my leader communicates too much. They give me too much information. Everybody will always tell you there's an under communication, stuff isn't shared. So I would call all leaders, all team members out there and say, if you feel you're over communicating, you're probably barely just about communicating enough. And I think all these 3 elements, if one of them goes away, stuff breaks down.
That is such a great model. 3 very clear elements. Let's unpack each one if you're up for it. I'd love to talk about how can we create trust, and knowing full well that trust can take years to develop. It's about consistency, doing what you say you're going to do, and it can be broken in a day. And that's the interesting thing about it. So what are your recommendations for creating a culture where there is psychological safety and trust?
Yeah. That's the tricky one. So as said, trust is something that has to be built. You can always say that if you join a team or if a team is built, there's a minimum amount of trust that needs to be there. But I think that's romanticizing it. I think we're humans, and in the end, we use data points. And so we look at what has happened in the past, and that helps us to make and a decision about the present and potentially a forecast into the future. And so I think the first key thing is consistency. I can trust you if I have an understanding of who you are, what's important to you, how you tend to act, how you will behave towards me, how you will behave towards me when things get tricky. It's easy to trust each other when things go well. But can I trust you? And can I do so from the past? That if stuff doesn't go well, if you lose an important customer, if you have a leadership change and there's pressure, if I don't know, there's cost cutting, if there's a market change, if there's a product issue, all these things, can I trust from the past that we will work our way through it? So I think that consistency and past experience are key, because trust is a lot about reliability. A second key element is respect. It's knowing that we are on the same level. It's knowing that you respect me as a human, you respect me in our alignment, but also in our disalignment, and that we have some way of having a shared language. So related to the first piece, it's also knowing that when things get tricky, there's some alignment about how we will be together. And for me, I would park that under the umbrella of respect,
Yes.
especially if things get heated. And I think then a third thing that comes to mind is authenticity. We can be completely different people. We can have completely different values. But if I know that you are fully who you are, and I understand what's important to you, I can be consistent with you, I can respect you, and we can be in the difference. And then what I would put around that is always that shared agreement. So what we do in team coaching and systemic coaching, mostly in the beginning, is we develop that alliance. So how does the team want to be together when they disagree? And building that trust through communication rules, through the respect, through some type of consistency, through being authentic in the misalignment, usually unlocks a lot of power, I would say. So I think there's many things you can do with trust. For me, those are three that I find are the basis. If you start there, then you can add team building and fun and feedback and growth and all these things to it. But I think that that's the basis that unlocks a lot of power.
In high performance sports and in the military, for example, where there is this trust is essential. You have to have it. Otherwise, you will not perform and you're in the spotlight. Do you think that team members can be friends or should aspire to be friends with each other? It's a tricky one, but I'm just interested in your personal experience.
100%. I think it's a very personal decision. It's also a very cultural thing. I'm German. I live in Spain. I can tell you that in Germany, it's very unusual to be really close friends because you want to be a professional. In Spain, everybody's friends.
Yes.
You leave work and you go for a drink and you hang out all evening. So I think it's a very cultural thing. And I think everybody needs to figure out for themselves what works. And again, what is authentic to them.
Yes.
I would say in my experience, if you are in a high performing team, meaning you go through all that growth together, it means that there's such a deep relationship there. Of course, that can trickle beyond the work environment. And I think that's great. But again, if it's not authentic to you, if you need that really clean boundary, that's also okay. I have some of my strongest friendships from past colleagues that we went through extreme crisis, like working in the travel tech industry in the middle of COVID when 95% of revenue went away. Like if you work through that,
Yes.
you probably can work through many things outside of work too. So I think there's nothing wrong with that, and you can build some really strong relationships there.
Yeah. My experience is the same. And in fact, when I reflect on the high performing teams that I've been part of, friendship plays a role there. We actually loved being together. It was we cared for each other, and we had fun together. So my experience is
Yeah.
very aligned. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
interested in the second element that you mentioned, which is conflictability. In some
Mhm.
places, conflict is just, it's frightening. People would rather avoid those important
Mm.
conversations. What is conflictability? Perhaps you could unpack this for us.
Mhm. Well, it's the ability to be in conflict and not run away from it. Being in conflict doesn't mean a quick compromise or a quick solution. It means seeing the conflict as there's something here that means we're not on the same page. Oh, interesting. I wonder what we can learn from that. Let's see that as an opportunity to learn something about us individually, about us as a team, and about the system, the organization beyond us. Because if you can start from the belief that there's not one truth, but there's just your own perceived reality, and everybody is right a bit, you can probably put more than one puzzle piece together and unlock a full bigger picture. So it's really seeing conflict as an opportunity for learning and growth. Some people think conflictability means the ability to compromise, the ability to step back. And it's exactly not that. Because if I step back and if I compromise really quickly, it means I'm actually not looking what else I can learn. It just means that you give your own truth up a bit. What I have seen in my work is, especially with co-founders, because I'm very focused on founders, co-founders are terrified, most of them terrified of addressing and working through conflict. Because usually what you have, especially in the startup phase, is a really deep dependency on your co-founder relationship. And most founders have this big fear that if they speak up, there's something that bothers them. Sometimes they can give really clear examples. Just sometimes it's just this feeling, which oftentimes is related to trust. If they speak up, things could explode. And what if then the business is over? What we do in my work is we actually do the opposite. So we develop that shared language I mentioned before about how do we want to be together when it gets difficult. And then we go there and we take it as a learning opportunity. And what I've seen so far always is you come out of it in a much stronger relationship and having gone through a really steep learning curve. And the last thing I would say here, if there's founders listening, your investors want you to have conflict. I have investors who pull people like me in because they say, I have this portfolio company and there's an elephant in the room and I can see they are ignoring it and I want them to go there. So people notice that and people believe, people who put their money in you believe that they will get a better return of investment by putting you there where it hurts. So there's a lot there. And we shouldn't underestimate the value of it. Conflict is scary. Conflict is really, really uncomfortable, but it unlocks so much. For me, it's a key, it's a door that allows you to go through that next curve to be high performing.
I really liked what you said about approaching it with curiosity. It's an opportunity for growth. And I suppose it's just a natural human tendency to avoid confrontation. And confrontation is
Yeah.
different to conflict in a way. You know, conflict is about curiously exploring that difference in perspective. I heard someone describe it
Mhm.
as a multi-perspectival reality. There are all of these
Yeah.
different viewpoints, and
Yes.
there's a seed of truth in all of them.
Yeah. It's like if you go to a concert and you have like a limited view, but if there's three of us who have a limited view and we have an ability to put it together, we get the perfect concert. Right. And like I think that's sometimes what we underestimate with um our situations, our reality, our business, our team is you cannot see everything. And based on what you see and based on all your past experiences and based on how you tend to operate in a specific situation, you come to conclusion A. But if there's a different conclusion, if there's a conclusion B and C and D and E and F and so on, it means there's something you don't know. So how interesting, how curious that there's more things to put together. So it's really that. And it's now that I'm such a fan of it, which I said I wasn't like that a few years ago, but now I see so much benefit. It's super interesting for me to see that for most people, it's not. People hear conflict and they run away. Or you will ask them to tell you something about themselves and they say, I hate conflict. I'm a really good team player because I hate conflict. No, that's not how this works. So I think
Mm.
there's a lot there. And like, that's something where if people call me like, yeah, we have this really big co-founder conflict, I'm like, yay, great, let's go there. Because I just can already see there's stuff that will unlock.
And it must be such a relief for the co-founders to have someone like you come in and to reassure that this is a natural part of the growth process, and it hurts sometimes, but it's going to be fine, and it's not a physical threat. I think that's what people, they misdiagnose, or they think that conflict is a threat to my physical well-being when it's not.
Yeah.
It's something to do with the business process or something.
Yeah. And I think what hurts you much more is not addressing it because it's there. People
Mm.
feel it. There's this invisible thing in the room that drains your energy. It's looking into your calendar and seeing that meeting in that day and being like, I'm feeling sick. Maybe today I don't come in. That
Yes.
that is the unaddressed conflict.
Yes. And in our resilience model, avoidance is the third level down on the downward spiral. It's that time when you're
Mm,
experiencing a flight response and you go, I can't deal with this right now. And one level
yeah.
below that is defend, or which is a fight response. And that's where things really start to get messy.
Yeah.
So interesting to think of it from that perspective. You mentioned creating a common language, and I love this idea of proactively creating some
Mm,
scaffolding or language or processes, its tools that people can use when the situation happens, rather than trying to learn in real time.
yeah.
How does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah, there's a beautiful coaching methodology called ORSC, Organizational Relationship Systemic Coaching. And it always starts from that premise of creating that shared language. So designing that alliance, especially when it gets tricky. So how do we want to be together when things get difficult? And also what do each of us want to contribute in that time? So what do I promise to bring? Like somebody can bring patience, somebody can bring creativity, somebody can bring silence, somebody can bring joy. Like everybody brings something when it gets difficult. And what that does is it allows you to be in alignment of how you want to be together when you're not aligned, which means every time you go into conflict, and it's a living agreement. You can always add to it, take away from it. Like we also learn there. No, it's not something that needs to stay stable. But starting from that um, perspective of alignment of how we want to be together when we disagree means you have a really strong basis to go into the conflict. You can imagine it like when you play a game and the rules are clear. And if everybody knows clearly how the rules are and it's a fair game, whatever comes out of it, you are probably okay with it. So it's defining the rules in a very collaborative way. Everybody has a chance, and the coach makes sure this mindset of everybody is correct in a part of it, that mindset has a lot of space. So as a coach, we never judge. We never, we will not be looking for a certain state. We're like, yes, great, exactly. No, everything has some value, and everything that is said by somebody in the team, by somebody in the system, it's part of the system. It's already there. So let's embrace it. And then we can have everybody respond to it. So there's a few tools to do that, and I've seen them being extremely powerful.
Mm.
And it sounds so simple, but how often do we actually go into a conflict, something that we expect to be a fight, something that we expect to be uncomfortable, or into a negotiation even, and we have that language defined before? I would claim hardly ever. And it makes it so tricky because then if we go into it, we confuse two things. We confuse the content piece and we confuse how we want to treat each other. With this element, the how we treat each other is already defined. And you can then focus very much on the conflict, on the content piece, which most people can be much more, I don't want to say relaxed, but they can be really focused on it's an argument. So it's making sure we don't confuse these two things. And we know that we can trust each other, we can respect each other, we know how to communicate. Okay, so now that that's clear, let's go deep into the actual piece of content where we disagree.
Sounds like the missing ingredient in most businesses, and not just businesses, in most families, relationships. If we've really defined the rules of engagement, we can have the conflict without becoming, of course, there'll still be emotions there, right? We're still going to experience emotions. We're human, but without losing the trust.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because a lot of family coaches use exactly that. You
Right.
can use it, and that's why I love it so much, because it's nothing that is focused on one type of, let's say, system or team or organization. It can be for families, it can be for couples, it can be for sports teams, it can be for orchestras, it can be for co-founders, it can be for corporates. Because in the end of us, in the end, it's always the same. It's humans who work together, who need to have some type of alliance, some set of rules, some alignment
Mhm.
on how they want to be together when stuff is great, but also when stuff gets difficult.
Yes,
We're all human in that.
absolutely. Communication. So, what are some of
Yeah.
the elements of good communication? And I'm sure you're going to say that it goes both ways. It's also about listening.
Yeah, yeah. Communication is not just speaking, right? It's
Yeah.
listening. And since you mentioned it, let's start there. Many people think listening means I'm not talking.
Yes.
In my mind, I'm already talking. I'm judging everything you're saying. I'm already going to think about what I'm going to respond to what you say. I'm already going to tell you the 5 reasons you're wrong. And you're still speaking. That's what we think listening is. There's deeper levels of listening. First of all, there's one level where I'm just going to really listen. I'm going to switch off my internal monologue. And I'm really going to stop myself from judging and preparing and, defending myself. And I'm just going to listen. And that actually is a skill worth training. It's not something you just make a decision. It's something that, and I can recommend it to everybody. Try every day, 5-10 minutes. Go into a conversation and not just don't speak in the moment, but really stop yourself from already processing it. Just be there and see what that unlocks. That's the first level. And what you will see is you will pick up things you didn't pick up before. And you might actually see value in what the other person says, because rather than investing your energy on saying everything that's wrong about it, you might actually pick up things like, oh, that's actually a good point. And then there's one level deeper. And the one level deeper is not just listening to what's coming out of the other person's mouth, but look at them. Look at their body language. Look at their energy shifts. Notice when something in their space changes. And use that. In coaching, we often go into that last stage of listening. Because there's stuff that if I'm really with you and I'm not just listening with my ear, but I'm listening with all of my senses to everything that's on your side, I will pick up things you're not aware of. And if I can hold up that mirror to you, there's a lot of wisdom beyond the words that we can use as we work together. So I think in listening, and that last level might not be needed in an everyday situation, but at least that first one where not just not speaking, but actually switching off
Mhm.
the processing and just being there, really powerful. So that's where we start with communication. And then the other piece is the actual sending of information. No? And here it's what I said before. You cannot over communicate. Or maybe you can. I just haven't met somebody who over communicates. But before you communicate, ask yourself, what is the message I'm trying to send? Who's my audience? What am I trying to achieve? Because while I fully believe you cannot over communicate, I do think that you can be more focused in your communication. And sometimes it serves to actually do that bit of pre-work, especially for important conversations. So you can also focus. Not everything that's important to you, not everything that needs to be said has to be said. And so over communicate in making sure your message gets to everybody, you repeat it, it's present. You can offer it in different ways of telling it. There's talking, there's images, there's metaphors, um, there's different ways of making sure the information goes through. But then on the other side, make sure that what you say is really meaningful. So know why you're saying things. And that's something that's on you. Don't expect the receiver of the information to know what they're supposed to do with it. That's your work. That's your task. So I think those are three things that I find most important. Real listening, over communication, the non ability over communication, and the prepared, focused communication. Yeah.
Excellent. We hear a lot about different leadership approaches. Some focus more on purpose, some on the vision, some on the mission, some on short-term goals. For a high-performing team, what do you think is most important?
I love all of them. Do I have to pick? I mean, really, you need all of it, no? Like, you need to know what the vision, what the purpose is, the why.
Mhm.
If as a team, we don't understand why we get out of bed, leave our comfortable house, show up to work, put ourselves through that beyond a salary, like put the salary to the side, the why I'm actually doing this is super important. So I think the deep alignment of, in the end, what is this about? What's our shared purpose? What's my individual purpose? But in the team, what's our shared purpose? Critical. I don't think you can do without it. And it's something that if it's not in place, great opportunity to co-create that. Nothing that the leader brings and says, this is what our purpose is, something that the team can beautifully co-create and something that they can consistently reevaluate. If I've gone through a few of these learning steps, probably time to re-ask, what has our purpose changed? I think on the other extreme, it's the planning, it's the goals, it's productivity. I'm German, no, so efficiency is important in some ways. So it's the what's important now, and if I have to get one thing done today or one thing done this week, what is it? So we're not, it's really easy to be busy. Really easy to be busy. It's really difficult to be busy on the things that are critical, because that means you also have to say no. So I think in that piece here, we're in the planning, consciously saying yes to things, very consciously saying no to things, and evaluating if I'm doing the right thing with my time. In this, there's also a big element of work-life balance here. You can always push your team to work harder, but can you help them use the actual hours they're supposed to be at work and they want to be at work to translate that into the best outcome? Much more powerful than burning them out and losing them. And then you have everything in the middle, which is translating that mission and that vision and that purpose into strategy, into an annual plan, into a quarterly plan. So I think there's all these different elements that all have a value. And I would claim that it's the leader's accountability to make sure there's space for all of these conversations. And the more you move into the everyday thing, it's where you empower the team. Never, never write to-do lists for your team. Never tell them what that one thing is. But make sure they have all the information of what they're working towards, and then be there for them and empower them to make a really good judgment on where they focus their time every day. And I think then that's when you then start having all these different elements that, like a working clock, work together beautifully. And for some people, the big visionary piece is really easy. For some people, the like everyday efficiency is really easy. Probably there's no human on this planet that is good with all of these.
Yeah.
But then again, communicate about it and learn from it. Nobody expects you to be excellent here, but learn from it. Learn how to use the different people in the team. You might have somebody who's really good there. You might have somebody who's really good there. And how can you bring your team together so they can support each other and bringing all of that together? And don't assume it just works perfectly in the first day. I think that is a huge learning curve that all of us will continue learning until we retire, and even then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How important is it to have different behavioral styles in the team? For example, there's a model by Deloitte Business team chemistry, where you've got the drivers who are, action, 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 execute the plan. You've got the pioneers who are visionaries. You've got the connectors, the integrators. You've got the guardians who are the analytical, logical types. Should you aspire to have all of those? And maybe should a leader try and be all of those, especially as a founder? Or I think you said it already, play to your strengths. But how important is it to try and have one or at least a well-rounded team in terms of those styles?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I'm not sure I can give you a super answer, because I think that's the tricky piece, and the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
A book that really inspired me is called The $1 Trillion Coach, about Bill Campbell, who was an amazing coach to most of the biggest leaders we know out of Silicon Valley. And one thing he emphasizes very much, he emphasized very much in his way of working, is make sure you have the right people on the bus.
Mm.
So why I bring this up here is there's an assumption that whoever is in the team, you can push that team to excellence. I think that is not 100% honest. So what I would say here is look with really honest eyes into your team and look if you have the right players there.
Yeah.
Make sure you look if there's anybody in there who's toxic. See if you can find a way to help them get rid of all that toxicity and become more valuable to the team. But it might be that team members also need to be changed. I think it's something that we're also not honest enough about. Like, not every team in the setup that it starts with can be a high-performing team.
Yeah.
And so to your question, I would claim that it's the same here. So you check what team you have, play to its strength, see what it offers. If it doesn't offer everything, okay. So if there's a gap, how do we fill that gap? Who do we empower to build that muscle? Or can I, as a leader, bring that muscle? Do I need to add somebody else to the team to bring that muscle? But most importantly, do I have anything in the team that breaks down other parts of the team? So I would start with that mindset.
Yes.
To say everything is needed, I don't know. Something to be evaluated, it depends. But the conscious assessment of who my team is, and also acknowledging that every organization has limited resources. Even a Google and Meta and Amazon, everybody has limited resources. And you really waste resources if you have teams that already from the setup cannot be high performing. So start there.
That is great advice. What's the name of the book again?
The $1 Trillion Coach. It's something that Eric Schmidt of Google and I think Jonathan Rosenberg and Alan Eagle wrote about their coach, Bill Campbell, who also coached Sheryl Sandberg, Marissa Myers, Jeff Bezos. Really inspiring. There's many coaches out there. I think this probably in our coaching world is somebody that's like the rock star, the rock star of coaches. Very inspiring person.
Excellent. What about dealing with setbacks and adversity? You've worked with many founders, and how can we gracefully or successfully deal with these setbacks that we're all going to encounter in our work and lives?
I feel like now we're going into your expertise, which is resilience. No?
True. But I'm interested in your perspective.
Yeah, but I think that's the word that comes up for me, resilience. So in entrepreneurship, I always use this image of the roller coaster. And my husband is an entrepreneur. I've been observing his entrepreneurial journey for the last 12 years. And the highs are high, but boy, the lows are low. Between having raised an amazing round and about to go bankrupt, you sometimes have a few months. It's a really intense journey to go on. And I would claim that most founders are a bit crazy because they start from nothing. Many times they leave really good jobs, really job safety, and they go for it. And I love them for it because I really think that our world today, but especially in the future, needs those explorers, those adventurers who say, I'm going to go onto this crazy journey because I have this idea, I have this vision, and I'm just going to build it. And then they embark on that roller coaster. And why I bring that here is because you go up, but every time you go down, this is where adversity hits. This is where stuff goes wrong. This is where plans just go up in fire and you just have to make a new one. And I think the ability to, first of all, acknowledge that that's what's happening. It's not you. It's not, I did something wrong. Like, it's natural to be in the up and down. But then also saying, but it's me. So it's I can now define what we as an organization do. As a founder, you set the culture. You make the decision about continuing. You are the one who's going to do the pitch for the 270th time. It's standing up when you fall down. It's not having an ego, getting your hands dirty, showing up every day, being there for your peers, being there for your teams, being there for your investors, always seeking feedback, always questioning if you continue working through it, and just seeing everything goes wrong as an opportunity to go through the next learning curve. And I think that is really, really, really difficult, which is why I would also say that if anybody says everybody can be a founder, I would say no. No. You have to be really, really clear on what that entails. And you have to be really excited about that. Because for most people, what it entails to build a successful business can be terrifying. And that's okay. We don't all have to be founders. But if you go for it, working on your resilience, being really humble, and just, going into that wild ride, the craziest roller coaster of your life, where you have no idea how it's going to end and when you're going to exit it and how you're going to exit it. If that is something that is exciting to you, amazing. But it's something that I want founders to be really, really, really conscious of. And the decision of who's going to sit with you in the roller coaster is the biggest decision you're going to take. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of narrative about starting a business, and like we always just share the success stories. Most founders don't have these success stories, and that's not a personal failure. I would like everybody who goes on the journey to found, like, I admire them, because that is really, really difficult to do. But you really need to be able to get back up, because you're going to be falling down and getting back up every day.
Very inspiring. I can see you're very passionate about helping founders along this journey. One more question, which is, how important is work-life balance? Does it even exist as a founder in a high-performance team? And what about building a culture of well-being? Because I know sports teams prioritize recovery. They know that intensity requires recovery. What are your thoughts on balance and well-being?
Super important. And what I hear a lot from founders who are looking into coaching or other ways of well-being is, I don't have time for it. And that's when I was like, yeah, that's exactly why you should do it. If you don't have time to invest in your own mental health and in your ability to be a better leader, so doing more with less, that's when you're just going straight for tough times. For some, it's burnout. For some, it's just, losing themselves, losing motivation. But that's really tricky. I said before, it's really easy to be busy. Some people have a big pride in being busy, and no, it's just like, I have so many meetings, and AKA I'm so important, everybody needs me. No, like, I have to stay in the office till late, AKA I'm so important, if I leave, stuff stops working. And I invite people to reflect if that's really true, because that's something that usually isn't true. And usually it's some type of inner belief that you think working more, doing more meetings, pushing yourself more means in the end creating more value. And I don't want to say that if you found a business, you're going to have a good work-life balance. Probably not. It's going to be a really tricky one. But it's up to you to set the boundary. I know many founders who have kids I see more and more female founders who found after they've have kids when they're in their late 30s, early 40s, find that super inspiring. They all have to make that work. You cannot just, delegate your kids somewhere. Like, they will still be there and you still want to see them.
Mm.
So it's start from being busy is not necessarily cool. Don't be busy and take that as something that is great. Question if that's really needed. So I think work-life balance is extremely important. Taking time for your mental health is extremely important. And it's your responsibility to do that. Nobody's going to call you and tell you to work less or to work smarter. That's something that you need to do. But every startup and every career in the end, it's a marathon. And I think it's our accountability to take care of us. And so if people say, yeah, I wish I could, I want to do, I don't know, more sports. I want to take some more time for me. I want to have more time with my partner, but I can't because I'm so busy. That's when I would invite you to really work on that, because nobody's too busy. The most important people on the planet find time for stuff that's important for them and for their mental health. So can you. And the last thing I would add is, because you talked about sport teams, no? Today, every professional athlete has not just one coach, but multiple coaches who help them work on different elements. If you are somebody that is a leader in the organization or founder, or has some type of role where a lot of things depend on you, treat yourself to a coach, explore it, because giving yourself that space to reflect on things, to be vulnerable, to share things that maybe are tough to share elsewhere, can help you so much. And just with like 1 hour a month, 2 hours a month, you can really treat yourself to a much better energy in everything you do. And that pays off in the end. So of course I'm biased, but I went into coaching because, having been coached myself in the past, I could see what that unlocks. And so I'm a really, really deep believer of that's something you can treat yourself to. And if it doesn't work for you, that's great, but give it a try. Nobody's too busy to start with 1 hour of coaching a month.
Thank you so much, Christina. This has been an enlightening experience. I'm sure people will be keen to connect with you. How can they find you? Where would you like them to go?
Connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message if there's anything you want to explore.
Excellent. And that link will be in the show notes. So please do get in touch with Christina. A final thought for those who stuck with us all the way to the end.
Treat yourself kindly today.
Thank you so much, Christina. What a wonderful message. And I've really enjoyed this session. And to all of you who joined us, I'll see you in the next episode. See you.